In the early church, the believers shared everything they had. They sold property and possessions and brought the proceeds to the apostles to help others in need. It was a time of unity, a time when hearts were supposed to be pure and intentions clear. But even in the midst of holiness, not every heart was true. Among them were two people, Ananias and Sapphira, who allowed greed and pride to fill their hearts. They were part of the community, part of the church, and they wanted to appear generous. They wanted the approval of others, the admiration of the crowd, and yet they were hiding a secret, a deception in their hearts. They thought no one would notice. They thought they could deceive the apostles, deceive the church, and even deceive God. But God sees all things. He sees the motives, the intentions, the very thoughts of every person. Nothing is hidden from him, no matter how carefully one tries to cover it. Ananias sold a piece of land and received the money for it. But he did not bring the full amount to the apostles. He kept a portion for himself, and he thought this was clever. He whispered to Sapphira, "Let us tell them that this is the full amount. Let us appear generous. Let us gain their respect and admiration, but keep what we want for ourselves." Sapphira agreed, and together they plotted a lie. It was a small lie, they thought, a harmless deception. Yet even a small lie carries great weight when it is told to cover the truth from God. They carried the bag of money. They held it tightly. They walked toward the apostles with their heads held high, trying to appear confident, trying to appear honest, trying to hide the fear that already gripped their hearts. Every step was heavy with guilt. Every glance over their shoulder filled with anxiety, but they pressed forward. When Ananias presented the money to the apostles, Peter looked at him with piercing eyes. "Ananias," he said, "why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit? You have not lied to men, but to God." At that moment, Ananias realized the gravity of his sin. The weight of God's awareness pressed down upon him. He had thought to fool the people, to appear righteous, to gain honor and respect. Yet the one he could not deceive, the one who sees all, the one who knows the heart, had already judged him. Immediately, Ananias fell down and died. The crowd that had been watching gasped in shock. Fear spread quickly among all who were present. They realized in that instant that God's presence was real, that his spirit was not to be taken lightly, and that even a single lie, even a hidden deception, carries consequences beyond human understanding. 3 hours later, Sapphira entered the room, unaware of her husband's fate. She carried the same lie in her heart, the same deception, the same desire to appear righteous while hiding the truth. Peter turned to her and asked, "Was this the price you received for the land?" She replied, "Yes, that is the amount." She repeated the lie her husband had told, thinking perhaps that she could escape the judgment, thinking perhaps that God would not notice, thinking that the crowd could be deceived again. But God saw her heart. He saw the intention. He saw the deceit, and the consequences came swiftly. She fell down and died as well. The fear that gripped the church was overwhelming. The believers trembled, their hearts heavy with awe and reverence. They understood that God's justice is not delayed, that his spirit is not deceived, and that the truth is always revealed in his perfect timing. This story reminds us that God sees beyond our actions. He sees the motives of our hearts. Even if no one else is watching, even if we think we can hide our intentions from others, nothing is hidden from him. Ananias and Sapphira's story is a sobering reminder that integrity matters, that honesty matters, and that the fear of God leads to a life lived in truth. Their failure was not in keeping part of the money. Their failure was in the deception, in the attempt to appear righteous while hiding the truth, in trying to fool God. Each of us faces choices every day about honesty, about integrity, about the intentions of our hearts. We may think our small actions do not matter, that our lies go unnoticed, that our deceptions are harmless, but God knows. He knows every thought, every desire, every secret. Living a life of integrity requires humility. It requires acknowledging that God sees all and that we are accountable to Him. It requires us to speak the truth, even when it is difficult, to act with honesty, even when it might cost us admiration or respect from others. It requires us to surrender our desire for recognition and approval to the one who alone knows our hearts fully. Ananias and Sapphira are not merely figures in a story from long ago. They are a warning, a lesson, a mirror held up to every person who struggles with deceit, pride, or selfish ambition. Their story calls us to reflect, to examine our own hearts, and to commit to walking in truth. When we live in the fear of God, we find the courage to be honest, even when it is uncomfortable. We find the strength to resist temptation, even when the world encourages compromise. We learn that our actions, our words, and our intentions are all visible to Him who is all-seeing. The story of Ananias and Sapphira teaches us that fear of God is not a fear that paralyzes, but a reverent awareness that guides us to live rightly. It reminds us that God's judgment is just, swift, and righteous, and that living with integrity is not optional but essential for a life that honors Him. Every believer can take this lesson to heart. We can examine our motives, reflect on our intentions, and ask God to purify our hearts. We can commit to living honestly, to sharing openly, to giving generously without deceit, and to walking humbly before Him. The church learned a powerful lesson that day. God's presence is real, His Spirit is alive, and truth cannot be hidden. This lesson continues to resonate today for anyone who desires to live faithfully and honorably. What would we do if no one were watching, but God was? Would we act with honesty? Would we speak truthfully? Would we choose integrity over deceit, courage over fear, and righteousness over pride? These are not easy questions, but they are the questions we must ask ourselves every day. God sees everything. He knows everything. He is the ultimate judge of our hearts, and He calls us to live openly, truthfully, and humbly before Him. Let us take this story to heart. Let us commit to living with integrity, to walking in the Spirit, and to honoring God with our lives in every action, every word, and every thought. Ananias and Sapphira's story is shocking, dramatic, and unforgettable, but its power lies in its lesson. We are reminded that no lie is too small to escape God's notice. No deceit is hidden from His eyes. The fear of the Lord is not a fear to be avoided. It is a reverent, guiding force that leads us to live rightly, to speak truthfully, and to act justly. In a world where deception is often rewarded and honesty is overlooked, this story challenges us to choose the path of righteousness. It calls us to examine our hearts, to confess what is hidden, and to embrace a life of integrity that honors God. We must remember that God's presence is constant. He is always watching, always aware, and always ready to guide, correct, and teach. Our choices, our words, and our intentions matter. Living in the fear of God does not mean living in terror. It means living with awareness, reverence, and a commitment to truth. Every day, we have opportunities to act with integrity, to speak with honesty, to live with humility, and to honor God in all things. This is the lesson that Ananias and Sapphira leave for us. Their story is not merely a warning of what can happen when we deceive. It is a call to live rightly, faithfully, transparently before God and before others. Let us take this lesson into our hearts and into our lives. Let us examine our own motives, confess our own hidden thoughts, and commit to walking in truth. Let us act honestly, speak openly, and live with integrity, knowing that God sees everything. Let us honor Him in our words, our actions, and our hearts. And let us remember that even when the world cannot see, God sees. Even when others are unaware, God knows. Even when we try to hide the truth, God sees the heart. Let this story guide us, teach us, and inspire us to live faithfully, courageously, and honestly in all that we do.